atheists, agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Northern Kentucky University political scientist Michael Baranowski. I'm joined today by not one, but two co-hosts, my conservative counterpart, Cleveland area attorney and defender of freedom, Jay Carson, as well as University of Northern Iowa political scientist, Justin Holmes. Jay and Justin, welcome back.
Good morning.
Good to be here.
So there were a number of things, guys, that we didn't have time to get to on the regular show, starting with actually another Donald Trump trial issue. And with, I think it's 91 indictments and all kinds of other things going on, it's hard to keep track. And in the last week or so, so much of the focus has been on his January 6th related trial, that other federal criminal trial concerning Trump's alleged retention of classified documents. That's been getting less attention, although in the last week, prosecutors asked the judge in the case, Eileen Cannon, to set a July 8th start date. Now, Donald Trump's attorneys have been saying from the beginning that in the interest of fairness, the trial should be delayed until after the November presidential election. But they said, well, if you can't do that in a recent filing, how about August 12th as an alternative? Now, that, if the judge went that way, would potentially complicate the government's efforts to try Trump on the January 6th case, which we're, of course, waiting on the Supreme Court immunity ruling on, in what could be an overlapping window, depending on how and when the Supreme Court rules on that other case. On Friday, March 1st, Judge Cannon held a hearing concerning the scheduling, and as of the date we're recording this, which is Saturday, March 2nd, Cannon hasn't ruled, but she did tell attorneys that a lot of work remains to be done, suggesting that this trial is not going to start anytime soon. Now, Jay, when we've discussed all of the many, many Trump indictments in the past, I'd say that your view, certainly my view, is that this is the most straightforward of the cases and the one in which it seems like it's most likely that Trump will be found guilty. And before we go any further, am I remembering your view on this correctly? Because I don't want to mischaracterize.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, I think on the merits, this case has more legs than any of the others.
And Justin, I haven't had an opportunity to ask you about your view on the Trump documents thing, but what's your take on this in terms of just on the merits?
You know, I think on the merits, I agree with both of you. I mean, it's a pretty simple law and a pretty simple set of facts. And you know, on the merits, at least, it seems like he's not in a great place. And
I think, though, that what I'm hearing from the right, at least far more right than Jay, I suppose, and this in part comes through some discussions with folks in the Discord group, is even if this is the case and Donald Trump did willfully retain classified documents, which to me seems awfully clear based on the evidence I've seen, still, this is a sort of a selective prosecution. It's sort of a, well, everyone does it, basically. Joe Biden had him there in the garage next to his vet or whatever. And there are all these instances. And the only reason that the Justice Department is making literally a federal case of it is because they are out to get Donald Trump because he is a political opponent of Joe Biden's. Jay, what do you think about that position?
I think that's a pretty good argument.
Okay. And so,
I mean, I guess here's the question, right? Is if this was anyone other than Donald Trump, would he be being prosecuted for this?
Yeah,
and I don't think he would be.
Well, I wonder though if Donald. I guess what I'm wondering is, that's a good question to ask, but what occurs to me is, well, Donald Trump didn't just withhold classified documents. And it wasn't a case where, well, I took these and, oh, I didn't realize, or yes, you got me, here they are back. But it was like, no, I didn't do anything wrong. No, you can't have them back. And I'm going to direct some of my staff to move them in places so you can't find them. So Donald Trump complicates things a lot, certainly.
I mean, I guess my thought is, so he mounted a defense.
But he did more than mount a defense, right? He actually seemed to actively act to obstruct justice, which is not, I guess that's a way to mount a defense, right? But that's, that goes a little far, right? Justin, what do you think?
I agree with you, Mike, that, I'm not sure. Non-presidents get prosecuted for mishandling, documents. Got a friend with security clearance that was really angry when this happened because he was subject to 12 hours of extra training, as part of this to not do things like that. But I think, again, this is one where the facts are somewhat different. Trump wants to muddy the waters with both sides, and Biden does it too, and Biden did it worse, or, whatever. But, Biden's lawyers were the ones that found him and turned him back over. And, Trump, I think he probably had an out in a way at the beginning, even though he didn't voluntarily identify that he has the documents. When they came looking for them, he could have given them back. And, instead he's got people moving him around and hiding them from his lawyers and things. So, it's not just the documents, but I think there's a pretty clear obstruction issue here as well.
And I think one way of looking at this, though, is that this is a very clever tactic on Donald Trump. I mean, it could just be Donald Trump being ornery Donald Trump. But the other way of looking at it politically, and I certainly wouldn't put this past Donald Trump, is he hoped to engineer a situation in which he could argue that the jackbooted thugs of the Biden administration raided his property and took these things. And so the obstruction was actually intentional, a means to an end, a very strategic sort of thing to reinforce his persecuted victim, greatest witch hunt in history sort of narrative. Jay, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's sort of giving Trump an awful lot of credit for thinking through a whole lot of things, right? Let me propose a simpler explanation. If you're Donald Trump, do you turn over the documents and just say, sorry, my bad?
I can't see that ever happening.
No. I'm asking sort of you, right?
Oh, me.
I mean, if you were in his place.
I see.
Right?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Because you're like, hell no. But let me ask it this way. If you're Donald Trump, do you think that turning over the documents and saying, I'm cooperating 100% and giving them everything they want, do you think that spares you from a special counsel or prosecution?
Well, yes, if the charge is withholding documents, I think it makes my case a lot.
Well, I mean, if the charge is possessing documents,
sure.
Well, hell, the charge was treason, Mike. I mean, Espionage Act. If that's, I guess let's put it this way. Do you believe the cop that shows up or the good cop who says, listen, really, it's in your best interest. If you just give everything to us, this will go easy and this will all go away. Or do you think that no, President Biden really wants me prosecuted? Yeah, I guess if I'm Trump, I mean, what's my alternative, right?
I understand what you're saying.
I suppose you can argue he shouldn't have moved things and so forth, but if he's right, and arguably. And I don't think he is as a matter of law, but let's assume that he is. That those are his documents to keep and move and whatever. Then yeah, I guess that's my question: is if I were Donald Trump, if I were advising a client, right? And there's the government, that it's the government is out to get you. And I think that's a fair reading, right?
So let me be clear on this.
Would you just say, sure, I admit everything?
Well, I think it's a false analogy, and here's why. Because I am pretty sure I have a lot of faith in this. I am pretty sure that if a client came to you and said, "Listen, there's a subpoena for these documents that I have. I don't want to turn them over," you wouldn't say, "You know what I think you should do? I think you should hide the documents. I think you should really try to obstruct justice as much as possible."
I would not say that.
Okay.
But if I had good reason to believe that those documents were not subject to subpoena, right? That they're privileged, executive privilege, that their documents, they can't take them. Yeah, I think that would be different. And I also point out it's a little different responding to a subpoena where someone's just saying, hey, we're looking for this information, versus a potential criminal penalty for having that information in the first place.
But the last thing you would do is say to your client, listen, get those documents out of there.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I could not ethically instruct my client to do that. Yeah.
Justin, any thoughts on this?
I think one of the things to me that's telling, I mean, there's what Donald Trump does, and we'll take if I were Donald Trump out of the equation because I can't even fathom what that would be like. But, if I were in this situation, the one thing here is, again, kind of listening to your lawyers. And I mean, he wasn't even telling them what he had. I was a little surprised, honestly, that he didn't just, throw some intern under the bus. He doesn't have a lot of loyalty to other people. And, basically, whoopsie-doodle, somebody was packing and this clearly wasn't my fault. But to double down, triple down, I wouldn't go so far as maybe your position that this was strategic, because I kind of agree with Jay. I don't think he thinks in that long-term strategy kind of thing. But to me, with Trump, I mean, it comes from this kind of notion that presidents are all powerful and, Donald Trump can do what he wants and nobody can tell him otherwise. And, I think that's a lot of the digging in the heels, is just that he's got this personality where, anybody that tells him no, he's going to bristle at and just keep digging.
Yeah, I think Jay, and that gets into something you and I have talked about a lot. And our sort of, while neither of us is a psychologist or a mental health professional, we tend to think, I think a key element of Donald Trump's personality is the idea that Donald Trump can do no wrong and can admit no wrong. And that is core to his being in a way that, even though that's common for a lot of politicians, it's so much more fundamental to who and what he is and what he represents to himself and to people that it would make that much more difficult to do. And so that just happens to play into a really useful strategy that kind of reinforces the victim sort of thing.
I think Trump is reactive and it's not three-dimensional chess. But let me point out such another example. If you're Trump. So Trump hired a guy named Michael Flynn back at the beginning of his administration. And I'm not even sure if it was before Flynn took office or maybe just after, right? But he gets the call from the FBI saying, hey, we'd love to talk to you about some stuff. No big deal. No need to run this by the general counsel's office. Just stop over. We'd like to have an interview with you. At which point Flynn ends up getting prosecuted for Foreign Registration Act. The FBI, it later comes out, did this quite intentionally. They knew that they would be disorganized, that it wouldn't go through general counsel, that Flynn wouldn't get a lawyer. And Flynn was candid, I think, in those interviews, or that was the problem, right? I mean, so Trump looks at this and says, well, hell no, I'm not going to cooperate because this is a trap. You're going to say, oh, look, just hand over these documents and it'll all be fine. When what happens is you hand over the documents and it's in likelihood, the government will say, aha, we've got you. We're going to continue to prosecute. So I think if I am Trump's lawyer, I do consider the defense of, no, these are all privileged. These are my documents. And I'm going to fight you on that.
Right. But there's a difference between fighting you on that legally.
The alternative is you're going to get prosecuted. And I think there has to be some sort of political realism here. Also, if you consider that supposedly the person, at least as was reported, suggesting that Mike Flynn might be subject to a Logan Act violation was Joe Biden. And Joe Biden has shown a penchant for wanting to have people prosecuted. So if I'm Trump, I think you're in a situation where, you got to fight.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.